All right, thank you, Pat. And welcome everyone to the July meeting of the Monroe County Land Bank Corporation. Before we go into our agenda, we have a new staff. And welcome everyone to. Okay, good. Before we go through the agenda, very excited to introduce the new planning staff member, Grace Sherburne.
Yes.
Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's very exciting to have you on board. Does anybody else want to say anything?
Grace joined us on Monday,
Yep.
and we're very glad to have her with us.
Excellent.
And I'm gonna let Pat, share more about Grace's background. She can introduce herself as well.
Yeah, she introduces herself, but she's already done work for the land bank. You'll see that in a little bit. With that, but we're very excited to have her. She came very highly recommended from her old position, which I'll let her talk about.
So I just moved here from Albany. I lived in Albany for about 6 years. I went to school there. I got my bachelor's and master's at the University of Albany. I worked at a private firm, MJ Engineering, for about a year or so, mostly doing long range planning, comprehensive plans. I'm originally from Ole, New York, so it's about 2 hours from here. Kind of wanted to change of scenery and wanted to be a little closer to home. So I really like Rochester and wanted to come here. So I'm very excited to be with the company.
Well,
Thank you.
Delighted to have you.
Thank you.
there'll be plenty to do, that is for sure. Okay, we've got a kind of a full agenda here today, just to go over the items that we're talking about. We've got some minor corrections to the meeting minutes from our May meeting. We'll get approval from the June minutes. We will talk about an update from the LBI award, budget amendment, have a discussion about land bank staff, and then policies, and then last, but certainly not least, talk about some properties that we have potentially in our line. So we will do roll call. Kevin Purcell, I am here. Annalise.
Present.
Here. Amy Grande. Orlando Ortiz. Deborah Campanella. Robert Franklin is not here. Jennifer Cesario.
Here.
And Thalia is not here.
She's
right here.
Oh, sure, Thalia, oh my goodness. I saw you, but then I already had checked it, yes. Apologize, Thalia.
That could happen more in my life.
Okay, first item, our May meeting minutes had three dates that were mixed up and just got put down wrong. We had for our finance committee, it should have read that the approval vote was June 11th. We had put down May 12th. For the audit committee, it should have read the approval was June 11th. Again, we had May 12th. And then the next scheduled meeting should have read Wednesday, June 11th. I believe it said July 9th. So can I have a motion just for us to formally correct those? Thank you, Orlando. Seconded? Anyone?
Second.
Thanks, Amy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. And then the approval of the June 11th meeting minutes. Does anybody have any corrections that they wanted to note on those? Okay, absent that, can I get a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Jennifer?
Second.
Second from Anna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Next. I don't see anything in our announcements and communications. I think we've got enough, we'll have as we go. But the LBI award, really exciting news that we have a signed agreement with New York State and we've submitted a funding request. Ed, I don't know if you want to add anything more on that.
No, it's taken us a while to get here, but it means we can start expending dollars and feel comfortable with that. We've submitted a funding request and working through that process to make sure that moves as quickly as possible. But it opens up opportunities for us finally to be able to start actually thinking about the work we want to do rather than just thinking about the organizational structure. So it's great.
Huge step. And Pat, thank you again for everything, all your efforts to get us to this point. Next topic is amending our 2025 budget. So we had put together a preliminary budget before we started to kind of build the plane. And so now that we've got a few more, not exact, but some more accurate numbers, we want to go through and do an update here. Pat, do you want to talk about
Yeah.
the changes?
Yeah, so you should all have, and I apologize, I noticed a minor error to a column that totaled in what I sent you via email, and so you have a new version that was printed out today. What you'll see is on your right-hand side is the 2025 original budget. And then on the far left-hand side is the current 2025 July budget. And so that is what I'm proposing that we change the budget to, based on the new hard numbers that we know that have come in, which I'll go over. And then you'll see in the middle is a budget difference. I highlighted differences in orange. You'll see there's some negative numbers and some positive numbers as we move money across different funding schemes. So I'm gonna go down the total. So no changes to the revenue. That is still $1 million of ARPA funding and $100,000 of New York State LBI funding. But the first change we have is to the insurance. So our insurance for the actual organization came in less than we anticipated, totaling $3,500 and change. That is without any sort of property insurance or anything like that. We anticipate that if we acquire properties, we will need, of course, have insurance on it. So rather than drop it down from 22,000 to 3,500, which is the known insurance amount, we kept it at $10,000. I'm waiting on a quote from our insurance broker for property insurance. They've already told us some of the details and that it is a convenient system that we can, as soon as we have a property in our inventory, we can add it to the insurance. They were supposed to give me a very, ballpark type quote per property, very rough estimate. That has not come back yet. But the $10,000 should be sufficient to get us moving forward. And if we need to amend the budget further, we can. So that's one proposal. Dues and fees, I mentioned, when we originally did this, we thought we were to fall into the first category for the New York State Land Bank Association, which was $1,500. Because we have technically over $1 million budget because of our ARPA award, which is great news. It bumps us up to the next tier, which is $2,000. So that is an increase of $500. And we have an outstanding invoice for that we would like to pay. So professional fees, this is this negative 67 is a bit of a misnomer because that is really just a title at this point. But what we've done is broken it down into fees that we anticipate or expecting. So we have legal fees of $5,000 that has been moved into that. Independent audit fees of $5,000, which we believe is about sufficient for our needs based on other similar entities. Consultant services, we removed that piece. So previously we'd aggregated everything in professional fees and left it at $67,000. We now have a little more detail so we can break it down. And then lastly is the administrative manager of services, which we're proposing, and we'll talk about it later, to potentially hire out as a professional services contract of some nature. And so we're looking at potentially $50,000 there based on from now till the end of the year. Realistically hiring, if we were to hit go today, we're still not going to be moving forward on that till August or September, depending on how quickly we can move. And that would be all encompassing of whatever that position and scope of services is. If we need more than that, we would come back to the board. If we need less than that, we just wouldn't spend it. And please stop and ask questions, but I can go through the whole thing if you want first. Property acquisition, we remain static, leaving at $100,000 right now, simply because we have a lot of unknowns there, so we don't want to change that yet. And that is ARPA funding. That's the other thing. So there's different funding buckets that I did try to note for everyone. Property demolition rehab, we did change that. And the change there is not that we expect to do less. It's just that more of the year has gone by and we haven't done as much as we anticipated. So I guess we're expecting to do less, but the reality is we're now in July and we were hoping to get moving on this earlier in the year. But that is property demolition. We have $600,000 or $60,000, excuse me. That is probably more than we will need, but it's a comfortable estimate that we can use if we find some properties that do need demolition. Okay, so salaries and wages, we removed that out of the current budget because we're looking to move that into the professional services category. Same with payroll taxes and employee benefits. It's not that someone won't get those things, they just won't get them through the way we're paying through a staff relationship, at least as we're proposing it. Conference and meetings, we did not have that previously in our budget. I put $1,000 in there just to be safe. I don't know of anything else coming up that I or anyone in the department wants to go to. But we have the funding to do so, so I'd like to keep it there if possible. One other thing is you'll see I have the year-to-date actuals on, expenses that we've incurred. If you recall, I believe my funding request for the conference was over $300. The actual expense came out to $226. All the meals were paid for, so there was no need to expend any money on, food and travel, other than the lodging and mileage. So those are all the changes. We still don't believe there's any need for equipment, advertising, information technology, miscellaneous. Most of those things would be provided through that professional services contract of that staff member, or we currently use them in-house through county staff. So, with that, that is the changes per category. Overall, and I still think this is, maybe higher than we, will actually see, but we have total ARPA spending of $165,000, which is, ARPA is dedicated for property expenses. So acquisition, rehab, demolition, we can carry some other things like insurance on those properties, but it's specifically for kind of the capital costs of our work. And then the LBI funding, which is $73,000, that is listed as, those are kind of the soft costs of the land bank. So that is any staffing, insurance, professional services and fees that we may need. And that comes because we're under budget for both of those, which is good, but it is a grant contract. We want to try to spend those dollars because the more dollars we spend, the more work we do in general. That is not always true, but I mean, that is what we're hoping to do. We want to show New York State that we're spending this money because then they will be able to authorize it for the following year. So we're not going to spend needlessly, but I do want to make sure that we try to spend to the contract limit if possible.
Thanks, Pat.
That's a lot. So
Yeah.
please don't hesitate to ask questions.
Questions from anybody about any particular line items or about the budget in general?
My only question is in regards to one of the properties in Gates.
Yep.
When I talked to building and zoning over in Gates, they had said prior to us being able to make any improvements, we would need a civil engineer to look at the property and make sure that it was structurally sound to do what we're getting ready to consider doing. So as long as we can set aside some funds for some sort of professional services for engineering, that might be a good choice. We don't have to do it today, but just please,
Knowing that that's
for
coming.
everyone to know that that could be coming in our future
Yep.
if we decide to move in that direction.
Yeah.
And that should fall under the property stabilization, property maintenance and rehab. So we should be able to spend ARPA dollars on that,
Okay, okay.
which isn't a problem, but we can spell out a specific line item for that if you'd like. The Gates property that you're referencing, my understanding is that was potentially a demolition candidate, or were you thinking about something different?
No, that's the right one, and that's what everyone here thought, and I'm not saying that that's not probable. But if we were to try and consider rehabbing it, which by the way, we can go view them whenever we would like, we've gotten clearance from all of the towns on all the properties that we were looking at.
That is fine.
Okay, but I'm jumping ahead.
Locations are.
I think I have everything built on them all.
Okay.
I have them right here.
Okay.
So
Other questions, feedback on the proposed budget changes?
And one last thing, Kevin, I anticipate that we will learn more between now and the end of the year. It'll have to amend this budget again.
Okay.
Sure.
So I want these changes to happen, and I tried to make it as, with as much foresight as possible. However, the purpose right now is to make sure that we can pay our current bills, which are the insurance, the New York State Land Bank Association. And then, oh, that's the other thing. We have not technically expended any dollars or paid any dollars out, but we are in the process of expending. And at this point, and I'm hoping to provide you an update every month as we move forward, now that we have something like this, we've expended $5,752, for just as a reference.
It's a start.
Yep.
How often do you foresee us like having to revisit these budgets?
I mean, definitely not monthly, but without additional clarity on what we're getting ourselves into property wise, I can't say. But at a minimum, I would anticipate that we would want to make changes. So typically, often at the end of the year, there's at least one more budget amendment request because you realize, oh, you've spent, pools of money in different areas more than you anticipated. You have the funding, but you just need to move it into the appropriate areas. So I anticipate at a minimum, our December meeting would probably have some additional amendments. But if we find out there's either opportunity or changes to our current plans, it might require more changes.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if we would kind of set something like on a quarterly basis, we reforecast or
Okay.
whatever. That way it's more of a every quarter or twice a year, whatever it is.
And I think,
Yeah, certainly when we're starting in our
Right.
infancy here, I think
Right.
that would make sense.
So I assume next year, because we have to spend the ARPA funds, we're gonna be changing that quite a bit next year. Because we've gotta get that money out the door.
I think at a minimum, Orlando, we can make sure that we provide you, a budget summary like this every month. So that way, not suggested amendments, but what we've spent thus far. It may not change a lot between now and next
Right.
month, but hopefully before the end of the year it does. So that way we can keep an eye on things and understand where we're trending. But I think quarterly is a good idea.
One of the somewhat major changes in this budget that we just got, Pat and I talked about this, was moving the salaries and wages up to, into the professional fees bucket because of the setup that we're gonna have. Our next item on the agenda is land bank staffing. Do you think it makes sense to
Yeah.
talk through that before we have a motion to approve the budget, just so that people are aware of kind of what we're, where we're at with that?
Yep.
Okay, great.
So I think as this board knows, we need additional staff power to keep moving the mission of this entity forward. We have the necessary funding through the Land Bank Initiative funding. And so we could hire someone either in Monroe County or at the Monroe County Land Bank Corporation. That comes with challenges in both of those proposed scenarios. Challenges that are gonna take significant time to move forward. And so to potentially address that and reduce the time, we are proposing that we instead turn it into a professional services contract and we find an entity that could provide those services for us. And specifically, what we're looking for is really administrative management. So we're looking for financial control, someone to keep an eye on the books, pay invoices, keep an eye on the budget. To Orlando's point, we need someone to help us with the administrative and bureaucracy work, insurance, all that other stuff. We need someone to, let's see what else, work with our auditors when we get to that point. Manage relationships with any partners and other organizations that we work with. So if we get to the point where we start having either demolition, rehabilitation, we will then have vendors that we need to work with, we need to pay, we need to provide insurance. And so it's largely a financial position that we're looking for, but I don't think it will exclusively be a financial position. We're hoping that they can ideally help us with the meeting agenda and minutes and things like that, kind of day-to-day work with a focus on the finances. So we're proposing that we look out to the Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation for those services potentially. They have the ability, they handle nonprofit and other work throughout the county. So they know how to work on ABO issues, which is the other thing I failed to mention. They know how to work on financial planning for nonprofits. And they also understand how the county works in general, which is important because although Monroe County Land Bank Corporation is separate, our funding is from the county. And so there are some challenges there that we need to work through. So we are proposing that instead of hiring someone who is either county employee or land bank employee, we look to a professional services contract. We identify what the scope of services is. We put it out on the street and we've had conversations with the Industrial Development Corporation because they do have the capacity and experience to do that, if they would be interested in doing so.
I am the,
Must be a procurement, like a RFP or EOI goes out, like, I hear Pat talking about a specific organization, agency, so I wasn't sure related to the procurement, cause it's over 20K, and
Right.
again, I'm still in county mode in our procurement policy, so I wasn't
So it is
sure.
different.
I know we have the policy in place.
So, the good news is we have a procurement policy.
And I'll just add to, for point of clarification, I'm the executive director of the Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation. As part of my role as the director of planning and development for the county. And MCIDC is uniquely situated as a separate organization with a separate board of directors. But it has a long history of being nested within county government and access to organizational infrastructure such that, including the expertise around the authority's budget office, but organizational infrastructure such that the organization could quickly employ someone, bring someone on board, and we can more efficiently begin the real work of the Land Bank Corporation with a longer term goal of, as the LBC gets up and running and functional, perhaps the Land Bank Corporation as a separate entity could employ this person itself. So this is a discussion that I've already brokered with MCIDC's board, and that board has approved this concept as it is within the purview of MCIDC's mission as an economic development organization. So I wanted to raise that, and then Josh, if you could clarify the legal piece of it, the procurement, because we did have this discussion.
Well, so let me go back to, there's two legal issues. The legal issue as to why it can't be a county employee. It goes back to the way our board is structured. We would have to add members, independent members to the board if we wanted to pay Monroe County back for the services of a Monroe County employee because of New York Public Authorities law. So we've got to find someone outside or have the land bank hire them. The problem with the land bank hiring them is it's a small one-person operation, and the costs of getting a benefit system, getting a payroll system, all that, which Bob Franklin discussed, would be prohibitive. One of the advantages of the MCIDC is that the person they're working for MCIDC, they are not on the county's pension program, which means that if the land bank wants to hire them down the road, it's a very easy transfer and it doesn't screw up their benefits or anything like that. As for the procurement, that's our policy. We don't have to follow Monroe County. So we can because the land bank is an independent agency, we just have to deal with our procurement policy as to how we want to enter into this contract. So if you decide you don't, we can vote to amend the procurement policy for this if we don't think it fits, to allow us to enter into a professional service agreement with MCIDC for the hiring of an employee.
Questions about, or people have thoughts about the idea of, in general, let's take aside for a moment the IDC, but just the general idea of doing this on a professional services basis as opposed to hiring somebody directly. Do people feel that makes sense at this point, given where we're at and what was just described in terms of the challenges if we try to hire directly? Does that make sense to people that we do professional services? It certainly seems like IDC is really well situated to have this.
I have a question. Is it like part-time or a certain amount of hours weekly, or is it paid on a bill?
That's what we need to decide.
Okay.
At a minimum, I think it would start as a part-time position and then could grow. But we have enough work in the land bank day to day right now that we could probably have someone full-time almost immediately.
Does the line item in the budget reflect, in the proposed changed budget, does that reflect full-time, part-time, can you speak to that?
It does, yeah. So that reflects potentially up to full-time for the remainder of the year. The exact dollar value of what we would be procuring, we don't know yet because that's not there yet. So we have to identify that, but that is the amount we could spend up to within this budget. And that works with our LBI funding. And as you can see, we still have a little wiggle room if we really need, trying to reserve a little wiggle room in case we find that something else comes up between now and the end of the year. I think next year, to Kevin's point, we should have a much better understanding of how our budget is formed, what are the recurring expenses, and what might be some of the surprise expenses that might come up with these projects.
So would the contract be with the MCIDC
Yes.
and not the person?
It would be a professional services agreement where MCIDC would agree to provide these services to the land bank. Provide us with an employee that worked for MCIDC that we can, the board, I mean, we'll decide, you know, is it the board, is it an individual, can manage and instruct on how to complete the various services.
So we would take the prior job description that we've shared and turn that into either an RFP or just a contract with MCIDC. So that's what we need to decide is what that looks like, and that's where your expertise all comes on into play.
And the MCIDC employs people
Mhm.
who do this?
The MCIDC employs people who perform the work of the Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation, so it's like a lending entity. We oversee and manage the county's microloan program for small businesses. We oversee and manage an SBA 504 lending program. We do all of the tax exempt bond issuance, not-for-profit bond issuance on behalf of the county for nonprofits that are looking to do capital projects. And then we also have a revolving loan fund, and we offer some equipment rebates for manufacturing businesses. So there's a staff of about 3.5 FTEs at present. And the entity's been in existence since 1962, I believe it was. So it's been around for a long time, very small, and like I said, nested within the Department of Planning and Development. But it has its own independent board of directors.
Its
we
own
can have-
attorney, its own.
And its own attorney, et cetera. It's, we have the ability to appoint up to 25 board members. Currently, we have 12 active board members serving MCIDC. So we could appoint additional board members. But the organization was in agreement that this type of an arrangement would make sense, understanding that MCIDC would be compensated or this would come at no net cost to MCIDC.
Right.
Right.
And it fits within MCIDC's mission
Right.
as well.
Right. It's a local development corporation governed by the state.
Does-
So,
Does the MCIDC have any other professional service contracts that would be akin to this right now?
yes, MCIDC has a professional services contract with Nixon Peabody for,
Those are opposite. So those are contracts where MCIDC is receiving professional services from outside.
oh, right.
So
right.
they don't have one, and they're essentially creating this to help solve our
Yep.
current problem.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yes.
And I think the other thing to point out is this is most likely a temporary solution. Maybe it goes really well, we find the right person, and in the future, we can bring someone over to Monroe County Land Bank Corporation on its own. But until the point that we can do that, this is a temporary solution to help us get the organization up and running and get the dollars out the door.
I can't imagine that this would be full time right now.
We would have to see, but I think we may not have full-time, but we have a need nearly every day just because of the quick turnaround that we're trying to achieve.
Sure.
And certainly in working with Pat, I can attest to how much I think has been on your plate throughout all this. So I certainly understand the need for us to get some more help. With our current procurement policy as it is, and understanding this has not been approved.
Yep.
What would we be required to, we couldn't just go straight to the IDC, correct? We would have to open this up for an RFP?
Bid process.
Unless we want to
Unless
add
we-
language
unless we-
to the procurement policy
Right.
stating that, we show, that by a majority vote of the board, we can enter into a professional service contract. With them, you could spell out specifically MCIDC or, for any matter that the board deems, necessary, for the effort's operation. I mean, that, there are ways we could put in kind of a sentence or two,
Yep.
allowing us
It
to,
fits around.
with, you know, majority, 2/3, whatever you wanna do.
Right.
Where the
Right.
board could basically decide to ignore the procurement policy and go with whoever they wanna go with.
I don't know that we're really ignoring anything. I think the qualified contractors is what, I mean, it's such a specialized.
But if you
Yeah.
don't go out to RFP, how do you know they're the only qualified? I mean, it's,
Oh,
they-
you can
it's
fill it, you
like
can
that,
fill it.
that's, yeah.
It's a very specific.
I mean, we might
specific
know
set of
that they're the
skills,
only
though.
qualified that could do it because they're in this space, but until
Right.
we have responses, can we definitely say that?
I'm just looking at the policy itself, not for nothing, but with Annalise working so close, is there any conflict of interest as we think about selection of vendor as noted in the contract?
Which we'd have to, yeah, we'd have to waive that as well. I noticed that, like that, you know, that it might be worth spelling out that notwithstanding anything to the contrary, the board authorizes as part of the procurement policy, entering into a professional service contract with MCIDC on terms agreed to and voted on by the board. And just have it clear in there, that, like the procurement policy allows this contract.
And I would, of course, recuse myself from any votes on that.
Yeah,
The reason I think we had conceptualized this approach was because it provides us with a more efficient, I guess, the straightest line between 2 points. You know, we can get from dialogue to action more quickly in acquiring and developing properties.
And the training time would be so much quicker.
Right.
training time, the
Right.
kind of influence over the selection of the person would be streamlined, like lots of things like that.
And just the time to get somebody up on board,
Yeah.
right? If you have to do an RFP, that it's gonna extend the timeline in terms of getting somebody in a seat and actually starting to do some work.
Right. And
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 And-
Pat and Grace and the whole planning division team works here
Right,
alongside, adjacent to the staff that works for.
and even if we went for someone outside of MCIDC, we'd want them to sit here, and then that raises problems if they're on their own computer system. And so this is kind of a way to bridge all of those problems.
and without having to expand the board, you know, if it was a county employee, as we
Right.
talked about.
Exactly.
How do people, do people feel comfortable with the idea of us moving forward with the IDC, fulfilling that position?
I do.
Seeing a lot of head nods. I don't see anybody saying no. That's great. Okay. I think probably the next step is to take back one step in our agenda back to the 2025 budget, which we've talked through. And I'm wondering if we can get a motion to approve the amended budget as laid out here. Thank you, Deborah. Anybody will second that?
Okay.
Thank you, Orlando. All in favor? Aye. Great. So now back to the land bank staffing, and we don't have any, on our agenda, we don't have any official motion that we were looking for today, and I don't know if that makes, if we need to have a motion, or if we just need.
I don't think we should have a motion until we adjust, maybe the three of us can work on the procurement policy
Yep.
language, approve the new procurement policy, and then approve kind of negotiating and entering into a contract for that. So I think, I mean, if everyone's okay with setting that up for next month, because that doesn't preclude us with talking to MCIDC and starting to figure out how that contract would look.
And I think people would be more comfortable if they have something to actually look at.
Yep. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure we're operating within the law,
Mhm.
so we're New York State.
100%. Okay, thank you, everybody. So the next thing is our policies. And here I have to sheepishly take some blame here. So our procurement policy, our subcommittee that reviewed that, I think 2 months ago, and we had a couple last changes. And I was the one that was took notes. And somewhere in this big folder, they should be there, but when I went back to find them, I could not. And so Pat has been after me saying, Kevin, we really got to get a final procurement policy here. So I don't know if it's going to be possible for those that reviewed it last time to take
So
see if,
close.
yeah, we were very, very close, and I apologize, but I'm wondering if, Amy, if you might have any, yeah, I know. Otherwise,
These are my wonderful notes.
yeah,
I was also on that committee meeting and I wrote, I had no notes. So I don't know if we made that many changes.
yeah,
I feel
if
like
we
there
did, they were, I think they were very minor and just
Yeah.
word choices.
Yeah.
But I apologize.
My only notes are RFQ over 100,000. No assignment without consent. I feel like that came up at one point, but. I think my notes are about. Assignment without
Yeah.
consent, insurance indemnification. About it.
Looking to see if those made it in here, and I, yeah, apologize for taking a little extra time here
No,
than
no,
needed.
no. Wait a second.
This is the main policy we have to update based on.
It is, so there's gonna be at least one more change that's gonna be needed. I was gonna say, rather than waste everyone's time here, would it be possible that we can get together briefly, even if it's just right at the end of this meeting?
Yeah.
Review it one more time?
Yeah.
With the idea that we are going to be likely adding some additional
Yep.
language here before next month regarding the IDC process. Does that make sense to you, Pat, or you tell, like,
It does, yes.
here,
Right.
again, I
Or,
apologize.
is your hesitation, do we adopt it now and modify it later? Is that your?
Yep.
concern?
No.
No,
Okay,
Not at all.
okay.
I mean, I'm just looking at the land bank law again. It's a little bit general and generic, about when you need to go to bids. So I think we're probably okay, but I mean, if we wanna go to bid, we can go to bid, but we're allowed to reject things for any reason. Essentially, so we could go to RFQ, put it out there. And then just, have only MCIDC bid if you're really concerned about it.
Well, I think once you throw all of those requirements in there, you're gonna get very few responses anyway. I had a hard time getting appraisers for crying out loud.
That's what I'm saying, but we can reject them anyway for like technical and other reasons, just looking at it, we don't have to accept the lowest bidder, so we could theoretically put it out there
I would prefer that.
if people do prefer it, and then reject for other reasons.
I'm certainly okay with that. I'm thinking about timelines, Pat, from, and Anna, from the planning department's perspective. And I know that we want to get somebody in here, and each of these steps is building in a little bit more time. If we, trying to think here, so if we have a new procurement policy for next month to vote on, between now and then, we can start talking to IDC, or no, we do not want to talk to IDC if we're putting this out on a
I think
open
there's a
bid.
30, well, that's for the county, for 30 days.
So I'm trying not to take my county hat off and think through what other amendments you want to do to the policy, because a few things comes to mind. I'm sure Amy was gonna speak to the blackout period.
Yep.
When you're doing an RFQ or RFP, that you
Well,
need
this
to
we
talk
can just
to any
anywhere.
providers, knowing that they may submit a proposal. The other piece
Oh, you know
too is, in the procurement
Oh.
policy, we don't talk about like RFQ selections, like what does that look like, the process? Who gets to be part of the selection committee? Is there a grading sheet? What does that look
Yeah,
like?
yeah.
So not to complicate
No,
things,
no.
but
Jennifer found something nice that we already had in there, set when directed by the board of directors, this has been used and vetted by other land banks. No solicitation or written proposals or quotes will be required for acquisition of professional services.
Excellent.
So, we already have it.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, 6A.
There
There you
you
go.
There we go.
Uh-huh.
Excellent.
Yep, so,
So,
so that we.
that means we don't need to.
So we don't need to change it, we don't need
to have
anything.
anything in that
Yep.
regard. So now that brings me back to the idea that we've got, do we want to try to get a procurement policy in place today? Pat, I'm looking to you in terms of, from a timing perspective.
I mean, I think to Josh's point, it would be ideal if we have adopted a procurement policy before we, move forward with any real procurement.
Mm-hmm.
But I know Josh and I have talked about that, even if we were to move forward with a, contract with a professional services vendor, this board will want to know what that looks like before they sign off on it. So I think to Josh's point, we could start to have conversations, figure out what that may look like. And then at the next meeting, bring to you both the finalized version of the procurement policy, if we develop any changes between now and then.
Yep.
And a potentially finalized version of a scope of services or professional services contract.
Yeah.
So I don't
Okay.
think we need to adopt this.
Okay, all right. And
I had another
Just-
remembrance. We had a sidebar conversation last time about we could put no assignment without consent into each contract where we felt it was necessary and it didn't need
not,
to go
not
in here.
overall
Yeah,
global policy. but
yeah, I
just
think we
within-
had a, part of our conversation, am I remembering that correctly? I think I am,
That certainly sounds familiar to me.
yeah. So I'm comfortable if we're gonna go ahead and do it that way, I'm comfortable with everything. I
Yeah.
think we've accomplished all of our goals.
So do you feel comfortable voting on this?
I do,
Okay.
actually.
Yeah, you too? Okay, well, I think we've got, everybody that's on the subcommittee's comfortable, so in that case, I'm gonna say we move forward with it. We can always, if we suddenly realize we had some issue, we can always amend, but I
Yeah.
do think we're in a spot to move forward with our
I do
procurement
too.
policy. So, with all of that being said, the procurement policy as, shared today, can I get a motion to approve this, as our procurement policy? Orlando, thank you. Anybody to second that? Amy, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we finally have a procurement policy. Congratulations.
I'm sorry, Pat.
No, and I would just like to note that, for the record at least, that this is, because you made no changes today, this is the same policy that you received,
Yes.
last committee meeting.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you've had this for quite some time, it's not new, I just wanna make sure that everyone is aware of that.
And there's a second reminder that if you guys look and you see something you don't like, we can always amend this at some point. too.
Understood. Next is our acquisition and disposition policies, which have been circulated. There were, some comments, I had sent around some comments. I don't believe we had gotten back anything else from others. This is a really important policy, obviously. That's really kind of the heart of what we are here to do. Pat, do you have comments that you would like to make on this?
I do not have specific comments on the policies, but because we have not received any additional requests for changes, my suggestion to the board is that we move forward with the policies as is, or based on the minor changes that Kevin referenced. We bring them to you, before the next meeting, so you have time to review them and give one last, sign off, personally, and then we potentially adopt at the following meeting. And one other caveat related to that, just because something is in there in terms of various programs that we could have, doesn't mean we have to use it. We can have things in there that we maybe aspire to, but we know we're not gonna do next week or in 2 months or in the year 2025. So I think that's okay, at least in my opinion, and I would encourage you to be okay with that as well.
So we will make sure that an updated copy gets circulated. And I know people have so much going on, but if there's time to get an eye on that before our next meeting, so that we can hopefully vote in our August board meeting. Okay, and now the really fun stuff is the properties. We've got at least three. I'm not sure if there's a fourth to talk about or not, but at least these three.
My homework last month was to talk to each of the towns in regards to the properties we're taking a look at. The property. Oh, here you go.
Does anybody, I have a
Greece.
couple extra if anybody needs something done.
He's willing to come and talk to the board. I had a conversation with him in regards to what would be approved, disapproved, all of the thoughts that have been running through our head and how would the town like to partner with us in resolving the issues that they're having with these properties,
And I'm sorry, who's he?
the building department.
Got it.
He was very happy to come and talk to the board. Just so that everyone here could hear it from him, that how reasonable he is with the setbacks and everything else. He also offered to meet us at the properties. Whatever we would like for him to do to give everyone a level of comfort, he's very happy to oblige.
Which
Similarly,
property is that? Sorry.
What town is it in?
it's
It's
in
in Greece. That's English Road, is that right?
My friend,
Oh,
my
yes, so
friend.
sorry, so sorry, it's in Greece. It's in. I-
It is. It was, yeah, the one with all the trees.
There we go, there we go.
And they had like, it was set back.
It was set
road.
back.
Oh, property A.
I mean, if we need to, acquisition of property is a reason to go into an executive session. So if we felt the need to discuss more specifically, we could have a motion. We don't need to, we don't have to. That is something to consider if you're.
I'm gonna follow your lead. I don't care either way. You wanna go into executive session so we can just have a conversation?
That's fine, yeah, I think that would make sense.
Okay.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we will go
I don't know.
into executive session. Okay, we went into executive session briefly to talk about a potential property acquisition. Went into executive session, so, because that could potentially impact the value of the property. We are now out of that, and we will continue on with our agenda.
And no motions were
And
made.
I'm sorry, and no motions were made while in executive session. Thank you, Pat. In terms of, so just in general, for our property discussion, are we good for today? Is there any steps that people feel necessary between now and next board meeting?
I think we have ideas and we still have a long enough runway that we have additional meetings to converse about this and identify what's moving forward. We'd like to be moving quicker, but unfortunately, that's just not possible right now.
Understood. Thank you, Pat. Okay, now for something really fun, an update on our potential logo for our land bank. Grace?
Yes. So we were looking to kind of develop and send out a survey to kind of gather your preferences on what you might like to see for like logo and branding. So it'll just be a brief survey, just a couple of questions that'll include, the shape and orientation, how the logo would look, horizontal, vertical, round, circle, some different options. And the questions will include references, some other land bank logos, image references, if you prefer, trees or a single house, building silhouettes or municipal boundaries, and then we'll have a question on a possible color scheme. So there's a couple of options, and then we'll also ask if there's any keywords that you identify with the land bank. So that will help us develop some logo references to send to our communications team, and kind of make sense of your thoughts and preferences.
So Josh brought up, I think, last meeting and the meeting before that, we really should have our own letterhead and things and make sure we're not using the counties because we are a separate entity. We are fortunate that the county does have a communications team that includes a very good graphic designer who is willing to help us out. And so this is to Grace, one of her first tasks when she came on board is with the land bank has been to set up this visual preference survey, just so that we can give her or the graphics team some guidance on what you think makes sense for you. We can start here. If people have more questions and more preferences, we can keep moving forward, but this should be at least enough to start getting and so we'll send this out via email so that way you can take it at home, sit on it if you would like. And we might add one more question now that I'm thinking about it. If you have seen a logo that you really like and you want to submit to us, we might be able to include that. But in either event, it will help us get to the point where we have more professional branding, and we can do so for pretty low cost or no cost, which is the preferred method right now. So any questions on that? Okay,
No, thank you.
Grace, thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Okay, last thing, are looking to reschedule our September meeting. So we still have our August meeting, which is Wednesday, August 13th at 4 o'clock. But for September, we're looking to change that from September 10th to September 24th. I don't know if people have calendars in front of them and can check to see if that works.
Would you want to book a little more time, given it's gonna be after? Given it's gonna be after the auction, and so that
To move
nobody
later.
is leaving it, no, starting at
Starting at
3 or
3.
something instead
Oh, I
of
see.
4, so that, because we might actually be making real decisions that.
For my needs.
No, for Talia's, not you.
Well, that was gonna be my other business as well, because our agenda has picked up so much, and the last couple of meetings, we've gone over 5
Yeah.
o'clock.
Right.
So I don't know if
No, that makes sense.
everyone on the board is agreeable to maybe we start at 3:30.
Yeah.
If we don't need the extra time, that's fine, but as you saw, a couple of our members had to leave at
Right,
5.
that's happened, I think, a couple months here.
But I
Uh,
think as we continue with discussions and maybe think of the property conversation next, we'll be going back into executive session
Yep.
for a while. That
Yep.
takes us out of the agenda.
Yeah,
So just wanted to propose that.
It's probably hardest on the citizen board members, so what do you say?
it works for me. We
Orlando
can check
said-
with Orlando.
September 24th worked at 4, but we can check with them if a half hour earlier will work.
Yeah.
I mean, the vibes. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Well, I like her idea, especially if we're gonna talk about this and then if we've gotten any Or
Right,
that we might want to be
Okay.
considering,
Okay.
at least 3:30, I think
it's
is,
not three.
to her
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
is a good idea.
All right, so we will send an email out to make sure that that works for everyone, including Orlando and Anna and everyone else. But I think that's a good suggestion.
Great. Do we want to have a motion on the, I see on my thing that there's a motion for the date change. I don't think we need to have a motion for our the date and time change, correct? Or do we?
We have a motion on there.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly, we can,
I don't think it hurts to do it, but I don't think it's the end of the world if you don't.
what time what time are we making this motion for? 3 or 3:30?
I would say 3:30.
Okay. So, a motion to reschedule our September tenth meeting to September 24th at 3:30.
I'll move it.
Thank you. Seconded. Deborah, thank you. Everybody in favor? Aye. All right, great. Okay, and then can I get a motion to adjourn?
Bob, where's Bob?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear him from here.
I'll second.
Okay, everybody in favor? Aye, all right. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. Phil, thank you so much for coming in. Thanks for your work on going out to or looking at the properties. And your expertise in this is really appreciated. And Grace?
Streamlined.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Awesome to meet you.
Just a reminder, our next meeting is August 13th at 4 p.m.
They're behind, so they can drink or anything, so it's like, they don't mind all the rules, like, they're not losing out on anything.
4 o'clock now, yeah.